few minutes of our inaugural podcast. Speaking of which, actually, in terms of inaugurations and Trump tomorrow, we have got in just before the apocalypse, haven't we? It's great.
This is the first and the last.
Exactly, yeah. But I'd just like to just quickly talk about, on a lighter note, I suppose, TV. What have you seen in the past few weeks or a couple of months that you found interesting or irksome?
Oh, I much prefer the irksome.
Uh-huh.
You can have much more fun with it. No, in all seriousness, the thing that I have most enjoyed, and in a sense, it's the gift that keeps on giving. But last year, the History Channel broadcast a series from an American production company called Cargo 7. Called Hunting Hitler.
Okay.
Which was the rewarmed leftovers of various other documentaries that have come out and books that have been published over the last probably 5-10 years or so.
So let me just jump in there. So you're saying it's not what I hoped it was going to be, in where they maybe dress someone up and hunt them through a forest? No.
No, it's not one of that. No, it's not that kind of reality show. No, it falls into it's and again it ties into our discussion earlier about post-truth. Mm-hmm. It's a documentary. It purports to be a documentary, which isn't actually a documentary. It's a fantasy riff on the sort of what if. And counterfactuals are great fun, but anyway, but basically they got together an A team of experts who just happen not to be archaeologists, historians, or anybody with any expertise on the Third Reich.
Why would you want that?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you want someone who knows what they're talking about?
No, you had a former special forces mixed martial arts expert, for example, who obviously bring a huge amount to historical discussion.
Because obviously mixed martial arts really took off in the 1940s. People didn't really know what to do because their loved ones were away, so they thought they'd create cage fighting and an experiment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A British former BBC and Sky journalist called Gerard Williams, for example, who wrote a wonderful book called Grey Wolf, which is about the theory that Hitler was that Hitler, who was chronically ill by April 1945, and repeated many times that he was going to commit. He would rather commit suicide than be taken alive, and was creating this whole Gottendammerung scenario in Berlin, where the entire he was going to go down with the rest of the Third Reich that he built, was actually taken out through a tunnel, which the series proved with GPS, which worked underground, that they could that they located, and he was then flown out to Spain across Allied control airspace, over hundreds of miles, was hidden in a Spanish monastery. And was then taken to a secret U-boat base that was built after the war for Franco's navy, and yeah, I can go on. And in fact, he was taken out in Spain in 1945 by an aircraft which appeared to be identical to an aircraft which crash landed at the same site in 1952. So. I'm joking here, but basically, so were they. But the joke was on the audience who were treated that Hunting Hitler was a serious historical documentary when it's not. It's a piece of entertainment, a very cynical piece of entertainment because it's presented as fact with no moderation, and it's back for a second series. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's back with the same cast, probably even more money. The first series reputedly cost $14 million.
Okay.
Now, how much real archaeology or historical research could you fund with $14 million? Oh. And it's back again. So it certainly it certainly made it for the network.
There,
Um,
there's a
but
market.
there's a market for this stuff. And the serious point actually is again, it's it's part of a trend in um, particularly on the cable and satellite networks like History and Nat
Hmm.
Geo for um, ratings driven, which is fine if
Hmm.
it's quality,
Hmm.
but inspired ratings driven product which is also inspired by the whole reality TV genre. So rather than again genuine experts who are good on TV, you get characters.
Hmm. Hmm.
You get scripted scenarios rather than genuine explorations.
Hmm.
You get lots of you get technical bells and whistles to hide the fact that it's actually the Emperor's new clothes.
Well, funnily enough, actually, this reminds me very much of ghost hunting TV shows.
That's
I mean,
exactly where it comes from.
yeah, yeah, and because the best ones are ones where it is just fun. And actually, one of my guilty pleasures is Ghost Adventures. I do find that
Yeah.
quite a lot of fun. Um, but the worst ones actually, there was one by a chap who used to actually be on the Ghost Adventures crew, and he went off to do something which was based in one town over the course of a couple of weeks or something. The worst ones are ones where it is this sort of hyper dramatized sort of. And I'm thinking of an instance where they're trying to find what's inside a safe, and they go, "Oh, we found a little child shoe inside this safe. Could this be what's fueling all these hauntings?" And it was such a setup that presumably, I mean, yeah, that sort of model is perfect for historical TV because you can go away, do the research, and you can sort of stage the discovery as you go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll look out for the second series. Uh, for my part, not so much one that I found irksome, but one which I found interesting as it's unfolded actually over the past couple of years. Really, has been the TV series Vikings. Um, Vikings is a fascinating TV series because, on the one hand, I think the Vikings are quite well portrayed. The Norse are quite well portrayed in that one. Yes, there's some things about the technology here and there, and some specifics about the ways that shields are constructed and blah 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 that you could argue about. But I'm not going to be that finicky. But the thing that bothers me most about that TV series is actually how they've portrayed the Saxon and Angle the Saxon angle, the Saxons in Britain. There's something very very weird going on because, for example, they're all living in stone buildings, and for example, the king at Bamborough is essentially living in like a 1950s version of Camelot, with people going, "My lord, the Vikings have arrived," and all this kind of malarkey going on. And they have these sort of little odd sort of miniature Roman style shields. And I can see there's a logic there. You need to set up that the Saxons and Vikings are different. You need to sort of, but I think one of the things that bothers me probably the most about the series is the way that they sort of seem to be portraying Britain as having been mythical to the Norse before they arrived here. That somehow Britain was this. There's nothing out to the west of Scandinavia apparently, and that's what they thought. But that's not the case at all. And when they arrive, there's this other thing as well in terms of the language, where you have this group of Saxons, a group of Vikings on a beach, and the Vikings kind of say, "Quick, we need to kill them and run before they figure out what we're saying." And yes, okay, there would have been. It's a bit like I suppose
It's like the
comparing.
Dark Age version of Geordie Shore, isn't it?
Yeah, and exactly. But it's one of those things where you just think. I mean, I know. Obviously, Old English and Old Norse are different languages, but there are enough similarities that you would have had a sense that the other guys were saying, "Let's kill them." It's a bit like I don't know, someone from London and someone from Glasgow, maybe. You know, there'd be some
Yeah.
very different dialects, but some very similar words as well. And so it's a show which aspires to so much. And for example, Steve Ashby, who I've talked to previously on the YouTube channel, is an advisor on that show, and the, they are doing something so well, but some things just it's a bit disappointing. But at the same time, this is actually something I would add, which I think sort of ties in a little bit with post-truthisms, is that actually I think a lot of this stuff is fueled by a desire to engage with the myth of who we are. I think people find it really, really powerful and really emboldening to think that somehow, one of their ancestors might have been a Viking or something. And this is something that I think we're going to return to in future episodes. Is this idea of the myth of nations and those kind of thing. But I think it's interesting how I think when it relates to politics, for example, they're using the argument of the barbarians at the gate. It's a powerful image, and I think that's maybe one of the things here, isn't it? Is that history essentially boils down to retelling stories and representing images and imagery. And in some ways, I don't mind that people love the power of the image. I just want them to get an accurately powerful image.
That's a very good point. I mean, I think it's very interesting in terms of the sheer amount of historically based TV drama that's now on our various channels. A couple of years ago, I was talking to somebody who said that, and it was around the time that Rome was being made by HBO, who apparently been talking to a commissioning editor factual at one of the TV, one of the broadcast networks, who said that the Romans are the new Nazis. Now, actually, I think that's probably been proven to be wrong by the sheer amount of Nazi-based stuff that's knocking around, and still, starting with the fictional stuff like Man in the High Castle and the and then going through things like Hunting Hitler and so on. But I think the fact that we've got so much Viking, Dark Age, medieval-inspired material as well, and I'd include Game of Thrones in this. I think most people, except I think George R.R. Martin, has actually even acknowledged that Game of Thrones is based in part on the Wars of the Roses. The idea of the great houses in conflict with each other. It's in this great sprawling epic, and the look of it, and the look of the different nationalities in Westeros are very much based on the medieval worldview, from Eurocentric medieval worldview. And down to your Dothraki horde led by Tamerlane and Genghis Khan. It's and with the Vikings, and I think what the really interesting one, and you talk about anachronisms and so on, or inaccuracies. If you look at the design decisions that were made by the production team on Last Kingdom, where one suspects, for reasons that the audience weren't trusted to tell which side was which, the English side were given completely unhistorical rectangular shields for the battle scenes.
Well, that was it, wasn't it? Sorry, yes, because in Vikings they're given little round shields. Sorry, my mistake. Little round metal shields. I was thinking of Last Kingdom, actually. Yes, where they're given these weird rectangular things. What's that about? But again, as you say, it sort of helps. It helps you tell the teams apart.
Exactly.
And I think this is a very similar issue in terms of post-truth politics and whatever. Is that there's absolutely room for fantasy and drama, and even historically inspired fantasy and drama. And I would put, for example, Last Kingdom towards that end of the spectrum, because it is, for example, I mean, one of the things that slightly niggled me, given my place in the world in the northeast of England. I don't live too far from the real Bamborough, and the setting of Bebbanburg or Bamborough is geographically completely wrong. Apparently you can ride straight up to it, on a flat piece of ground. You can't do that in real life.
It's almost as good as the fact that when he returned from the Third Crusade, Robin Hood rode from the White Cliffs of Beachy Head to Nottingham via Hadrian's Wall
in one day.
In one day, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting piece of.
But no, and that's the thing. And the thing is as well. And that's the other thing as well. I love that film. I love Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. And so I'm totally open to being entertained. But it is these little inaccuracies that not only make me giggle, but in some cases make me just sort of slightly just go, oh, for example, in the case of the shield shapes in The Last Kingdom, I just sort of think to myself, well, actually, they didn't have to do that. They could have just gone with a Saxon, with the realistic circular shields. Maybe just had the colours be very distinct on the shield. Yeah. But anyway, but yeah, I think there's going to be plenty of fodder for discussion on this. And actually, if nothing else, if people want to sort of to be primed for future
Yeah.
episodes of this, just check out most things that call themselves documentaries on, for example, Netflix. See what happens there, or just have a look, see what you can find. Because there's one about the pyramids. I think I saw on Netflix. I might try and watch that, see what I think, see where it goes. But yeah, entertainment is great, but sometimes it just takes the mick a bit, I think.
And actually, I think the serious point is that again in the post-truth climate, if there's, you know, I think, and again, I think we have to draw a distinction between drama as entertainment, which the Vikings is, and which the Last Kingdom is. It's a TV series made from a novel. The clue is in the word novel. It's it's a historical construct by an author,
Yes,
not
but
by a historic.
Vikings is a TV series made by the History Channel.
This is true. This is true. This is true, and that's where things do get blurred. And when you get things like Hunting Hitler and the Search for the Lost Giants and the Oak Island and so on turning up on documentary channels, that's the problem, because they're not documentaries; they're scripted fictions.
Yeah.
And
I suppose scripted fiction would be a strange category. I'm in the mood for some scripted fiction.
So I say scripted; it implies all the lines of it. They're storylined.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily completely scripted from top to bottom, but they are storylined. Yeah. And that is not what documentary is about.
No.
Not genuine, insightful documentary, certainly.
Okay.
Okay. And I think it's beholden for people with genuine expertise and knowledge of those areas to actually engage with those things, so that the alternative view is actually out there when the audience afterwards Googles, is Oak Island true, or is Hunting Hitler true? And in fact, I know from the accounts of the Google searches that we get on Pipeline that the review that we did for the first series of Hunting Hitler is one of our most popular ever articles. It's people who are googling things literally like, is Hunting Hitler true?
Yeah, which in that sense can act as a wonderful gateway, certainly.
Exactly, and that's why we have to engage with these things.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, in that sense, I'm not saying don't watch them, but
No.
I'm more than happy to apply a massive tongue in cheek to these TV series as we progress with our podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay.